5.1%. The Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, joins us now from Canberra. Treasurer, good morning.
Nice to be with you, Michael.
I'll get to those jobless figures in a moment, I promise, but firstly, we need to talk about the vaccine rollout, which is front and centre for a lot of our viewers this morning.
Sure.
The Chief Medical Officer, Paul Kelly, has conceded this will be a knock to confidence already. We are hearing from GPs, getting calls from people in their 50s and 60s cancelling their scheduled second doses of AstraZeneca. How on earth is the government going to get this vaccine rollout back on track?
Well, we've again taken the medical advice, and obviously that has served us very well throughout this pandemic because Australia has been very successful in suppressing the virus. Obviously, there have been issues and challenges with the AstraZeneca vaccine. We've taken the advice of ATAGI. It's going to be available to those aged 60 and over. And the medical advice is that the vaccine is still very effective, very appropriate for people of that age cohort. But for those below 60, then the Pfizer vaccine is the one they should be getting.
OK, I mean, you can say that, Paul Kelly can say that, I can say that. I'm more than happy to get my second AstraZeneca dose, but there is clearly a public confidence issue here. We heard from the Health Minister yesterday there's $41 million allocated for a public information campaign. What is the government doing on that front? Because people need convincing here.
Well, you're absolutely right, Michael, that there is vaccine hesitancy out there in the community. And again, I can only reiterate the words of the medical experts, people who know much more about this than either you or I, and their advice is that the AstraZeneca vaccine remains safe, bearing in mind that if you look abroad, for example, in the United Kingdom, they are delivering the AstraZeneca vaccine to those aged 40 and over. In South Korea, those aged 30 and over, and those in Germany aged 18 and over. So this is cautious advice.
Is it too cautious?
It's advice that the government has taken.
Is it too cautious based on the situation in the other countries there you cited?
It's not for me to say that. This is the advice from ATAGI. It's advice that the government has taken.
OK, now we do know that fewer than 4% of people have had full vaccination. We speak, of course, of 2 doses. The government is still insisting that it hopes to complete the vaccination rollout by 2021, or the end of this year. That surely is increasingly a very brave assumption.
Well, as you know, we're focused on the most vulnerable cohorts initially. So more than 60% of those aged 70 and over have received doses, and then more than 50% of those aged 60 and over have received doses. So we've been focusing on those more vulnerable cohorts. But when it comes to rolling out the vaccine more broadly, as the supply comes on board, and as you know, we're securing more Pfizer vaccine, then the rollout will continue. But we can't prevent these challenges that have arrived with the AstraZeneca vaccine based on the ATAGI advice. These are challenges faced by all countries that are rolling out this vaccine. But we have taken an approach to get a number of vaccine options, and that's what has been provided. OK, I want to talk about jobs and super before we go. Firstly, to jobs, the 5.1% figure, which is great news on any front. But of course, our minds now turn to, well, if the labour market is tightening so quickly, where are the wage rises for ordinary Australians? Well, again, you start to get wage rises when you get competition for labour. And what I said in a speech ahead of this year's budget was that the unemployment rate really needs to be around 4.5% to 5% before you start to see that upward pressure on wages that we would like to see. But this is a very good sign that the economy is recovering strongly. We know that the unemployment rate has come back to where it was last February before the pandemic. We've seen employment levels above where they were before the pandemic. Australia doing that ahead of any advanced economy. 115,000 jobs in the month of May, 85% of those jobs being full-time jobs, 60% of those jobs going to women. And another really important message here is that even with the end of JobKeeper, Michael, we have seen 84,000 jobs being created since that time. So the sky hasn't fallen as our political opponents wanted us to think back then.
And just very, very quickly, we're out of time. The super changes, I guess on any other morning would have been very big news, but there are a lot of other stories going around. What does this mean, in your view, to the average super holder?
Well, it means lower fees and better returns from their fund. These are the most significant reforms since compulsory super came in 1992. We were opposed every step of the way, not just by the funds themselves, but by our political opponents. We got them through with the support of the crossbench. People will now have one fund that will stay with them through the course of their career, so they don't have multiple funds that are unnecessarily, and that the small balances in those funds get eaten away by the fees. They'll be able to compare the performance of their fund online, both in terms of fees and returns, and underperforming funds will be held to account and penalised if they perform below a benchmark. So these are very significant reforms, all about lowering fees for Australians with super.
Treasurer, thank you.
My pleasure.